I had a whole bunch of weird paranoid suspicions about what the hell was going on because there was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand.
Right. It isn't what it purports to be anymore. It's moved away from what it was intended to be and what it is.
It's an open secret in Hollywood. These people have their own religious and spiritual teachings and their own social and moral frameworks. They have their sacred texts. They are sick, believe me. And they couldn't be more at odds with what America stands for.
It does rip your life to pieces.
Does it?
If you'll let it.
Yeah.
It's a dark institution in a lot of ways because it's history.
Yeah, I'm kind of blacklisted. I haven't gotten a studio job in 15 years. It was just absurd.
You have to make a deal with everyone else, and it's almost unspoken, that you are going to be fucked over at some point. I drove a buddy of mine to an audition for this film, and they saw me in the office and they said, "Whoa, you're a freak. We might need freaks in this film." And so they took Polaroids of me, slapped them on the board, and they said, "Come back in 3 weeks when you heal up." So I came back in 3 weeks, and they said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm here." And they said, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "I'm that guy on the board." And they said, "Oh, interesting. Go in and talk to the man." I went in and told him a joke, and he said, "You got the part." Like that. It was really, It was weird.
I think it all starts with, like, you got to look at yourself a lot. And it's like, how do you get meaning out of this existence? And what's it all about? So it's a search in that direction. And I think the search, you might never get to the end of it, but I think the very act of searching yields some kind of good fruit.
You know how many celebrities went to Diddy's house?
No. Puffy invited me. I don't bend over in that way. I don't play gay roles. I don't kiss a man. I don't do that shit because the man card means everything. That's the only thing I can think of. You lose your damn man card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man.
Now, I've had to turn down $50 million 4 times just to protect my integrity and that virgin hole I was telling you about.
Mel Gibson's voice, rough as gravel and sharp as broken glass, cuts straight through the quiet hum of a distant set. No background noise, no distractions, just the raw tremble of truth spilling from someone who's seen the machinery up close. Val wouldn't bend, Gibson says, his eyes drifting somewhere behind the camera, as if searching for a version of the past that never made it to the screen. They needed him to bow, to obey, to sell just enough of himself to be useful. He wouldn't. So they took him out, not with a bang, but with a whisper. It sounds like something out of an urban myth. The kind of story passed between disillusioned grips and burnt-out actors on late-night sets, exaggerated by the hour and buried by the morning. But when Mel Gibson says it, you don't laugh. You listen. Because Mel knows exile. He's lived in it, made movies inside it, and clawed his way out of it. And if he's right, then Val Kilmer's fall from stardom wasn't the result of bad luck, bad attitude, or bad press. It was the result of saying no at the wrong dinner table. Val's career didn't just peak, it soared. He didn't stumble his way into fame, he launched into it like a rocket. In the early 80s, he showed up in Top Secret and instantly turned heads. A year later, Top Gun blew the doors open, and by the time he played Jim Morrison in The Doors, people weren't sure if it was him or actual archival footage. Then came Tombstone, where he redefined Doc Holliday with every line soaked in sweat, sarcasm, and slow-burning danger. Batman Forever put him in the blockbuster elite. He wasn't climbing a ladder, he was skipping rungs. But then, just like that, the silence hit. No big scandal, no meltdown on set, just gone. Replaced? Forgotten. Hollywood didn't even send flowers. They never do. When actors disappear like that, the press likes to write fairy tales. They call them difficult. They say the star got too big for their trailer, or they yelled at a costume assistant. It's always the same formula. If the audience believes the actor self-destructed, the machine gets to stay clean. But Gibson's version, it paints a different picture. Not a tantrum, but a target. Not an outburst, but a refusal. He talks about the dinners, quiet, polished affairs where the most powerful people in the room never use titles. There are no contracts, just suggestions, friendly offers, perks that sound like blessings but feel like chains, exclusive access, first look deals, back-end points that triple your salary, private jets, silent villas, NDA sealed weekends. And one simple rule: stay quiet and play along. Say yes, and the stars align. Say no, and the phone stops ringing. Gibson swears Val got that invitation right around the time he was doing Heat and getting calls for Batman. And when he left the room, no outburst, no drama, just a quiet no. That's when the wind turned. Scripts dried up, directors hesitated, studios stopped calling, the stories began leaking, little rumors that don't even need to be true, just enough to stain the air. He's hard to work with. He's intense. He's paranoid. The kind of red flags that don't scream, they whisper. And Hollywood listens more to whispers than applause. Look at the timeline, and it starts to feel less like coincidence and more like choreography. Between 1996 and 1999, a wave of once untouchable actors hit the same wall. Wesley Snipes started asking questions about his finances. Next thing you know, he's doing interviews from prison. Brendan Fraser said the wrong thing to the wrong person. Suddenly, he's doing cameos on cable TV. Gibson himself couldn't get a studio to answer the phone after The Passion of the Christ. And Val, he went from leading man to barely making DVD bargain bins. But there's something darker beneath the surface, something Gibson refuses to say directly, but dances around like a fuse nearing a flame. He calls it the toll, the unspoken price. Those private dinners come with unlisted menus. You don't just sign away a few morals, you participate. You show up at estates where phones are taken and cameras are forbidden, where rituals happen, where silence is mandatory. He won't say what those rituals are. He doesn't have to. He does say Val walked away. Not because he was paranoid, but because he saw the trap for what it was. He saw the soul tax coming, and instead of letting Hollywood carve pieces out of him, he walked. Quietly, respectfully, but completely. And that's when the machine turned on him. Kilmer never called it a blacklist. He was too smart for that, too careful. But in a rare interview, when asked if he thought he'd been shut out, he smiled and said, "Not in a way. You are." That laugh wasn't amused. It was tired, like someone who knew better than to keep knocking on doors that had been welded shut. That exile didn't just cut into his finances, it bled into his identity. The documentary Val is more than a memoir. It's a surveillance record, a man filming himself because nobody else would. Kilmer captured his own decline with the precision of a director and the soul of a survivor. Home videos, stage rehearsals, lonely performances in empty halls, a Juilliard graduate, a one-time box office titan, reduced to playing Mark Twain on tour buses just to feel alive again. Mel calls the film evidence. Every clip, every diary, every fragment of a conversation shows a man pushed out of the frame but refusing to stop performing. He mentions one executive who called Val's performance flawless, but wouldn't cast him in the sequel for optics. Another journalist was told not to ask about a canceled film, and an agent, someone Val trusted, warned him bluntly to stop stirring things up or he'd never work again. Then there's The Island, you know the one. Mel never uses the owner's name. He calls him the pilot. Says Val got one of those golden invites and turned it down. After that, the script stopped. Maybe it's all coincidence, but coincidences don't usually walk in packs, and they sure as hell don't all lead to the same locked door. While Val faded into stage plays and spiritual monologues, Mel went to war. He called out the industry, said it was broken, rotten, morally bankrupt. He didn't just burn bridges, he dropped napalm on them. He backed Sound of Freedom when no studio would touch it. And when the movie made over $100 million without their help, the silence from the awards shows was louder than any standing ovation. By 2020, cancer had stolen Val's voice. The instrument that made him famous was replaced by a soft, mechanical whisper. But when Top Gun Maverick called, he showed up. Not for the paycheck, not for the spotlight, for the closure. Friends on set said it broke him emotionally, every line synthesized from past performances, every take a reminder of what was lost. But he showed up, did the scene, hugged Tom Cruise, and walked back into the shadows. Then came the date that hit like a hammer, April 1st. Val Kilmer, gone at 65. The first report said pneumonia, but whispers said it was more than that. A leaked coroner's report pointed to infection, malnutrition, surgical wounds that never healed, and pain meds strong enough to knock out a rhino. It didn't scream murder. It whispered abandonment, a man left behind, a legend they let decay. Gibson's eulogy at the private memorial was searing. No notes, no apologies, just rage and reverence. 5 minutes praising Val, 10 minutes ripping into an industry that let him rot. He didn't name names, but the message was clear. They punished him for refusing to kneel, then stood back as he bled in silence. No cameras were allowed, but the word spread anyway, and they stung. So, what does selling your soul actually mean in Hollywood? Gibson says it starts small, agreeing to a rewrite that turns your character into a commercial, laughing at a producer's joke that makes your stomach turn, going to that party where your phone gets locked in a box and nobody mentions what happened after midnight. One compromise leads to another. Before you know it, you don't recognize yourself in the mirror, but they love you. Because you're pliable. Val Kilmer never got pliable. He kept clutching onto whatever integrity he had left, even when it splintered. And the machine hates that. A tantrum can be fixed. A true believer? That's dangerous. One person walks away with their soul intact, and it gives others ideas. And ideas are contagious. The proof of his legacy doesn't live in the tabloids. It lives in the movies. Every time someone streams Tombstone or rewatches The Doors, Val resurrects, frame by frame. That's the kind of immortality no blacklist can touch. You can erase someone from the call sheet. You can cut them from the trailer. But if they did something real, something honest, you can't erase the impact. Gibson ends the conversation with a sentence that doesn't sound like closure. It sounds like a warning. They think they won, but they didn't. They erased Val from the posters, not from our memory. So the next time you wonder what happened to your favorite actor, the one who vanished just when they were hitting their prime, don't look for a scandal. Don't assume they self-destructed. Ask a better question. Who did they refuse? What party didn't they attend? What ritual did they walk away from? Because sometimes, survival in Hollywood comes down to how many parts of yourself you're willing to trade. And Val Kilmer decided the price was too high. He walked. And in doing so, he left a blueprint, a trail of defiance that other artists might one day follow. Not because they're reckless, but because they believe there's something more sacred than fame. And that belief, however inconvenient, is the one thing the machine can never fully control.